you see, well, a good picture of Pat Donovan, one half of the Pat and Aaron Show, middays on WDAE 95.3 in Tampa. Follow Pat on Twitter at Pat Donovan Radio. Pat, I thought I saw a tweet in which you said, "I've never been happier for being more wrong." I thought you were all over the Bucs last night.
No, I was not, and I have been for much of the season. I've been very optimistic about this team, but listen, I went into this game and I said, you have to show me that you can block the Saints, and they haven't done that all season. You have to show me that you can stop the Saints from scoring, and they hadn't done that all season. And I wasn't super confident about the Buccaneers going into that game. The only thing I was right about was Devin White having a huge game. I could see that coming a mile away, and I think anybody close to this football team could, because that kid was foaming at the mouth all week looking to get back on the field after the COVID thing that last week. But no, I had this thing wrong for sure.
All right. I was watching, and I've tried to get myself away from watching a lot of pregame shows because all they can do is tell me more things that confuse me. But as I was watching, there were a lot of guys yesterday morning that were, I think, in your same boat, really questioning the secondary of Tampa Bay. Going, I just don't know how this secondary, how the back end's able to hold up. They didn't just hold up. They were terrific yesterday, Pat.
They were, and that's the potential of this young group. And I think whenever you do have a group, especially in a secondary in the NFL that's as young as this one is, you're always going to have some hiccups. You're always going to have some games where they don't look very good or they get beat. And guys, and you guys know this. I mean, guys who are great at that position in this league when it comes to cornerback get beat all the time. And when you're as young as the Buccaneers are, that's that can happen. But at the same time, you can see the talent back there, and they really did have a fantastic game, and capped off by just a huge turnover created by Antoine Winfield Jr. there late in the game, because the Saints are up 7, they're driving, and if they go up 2 scores, you know how things change when you get down a couple scores in the second half in a playoff game. You start pushing a little bit, maybe more mistakes happen. You never know if Antoine Winfield Jr. doesn't strip that ball away from Cook, how that drive ends up and how that changes the football game. So it really was a fantastic game by the secondary.
And to just further Pat's point, remember how the second half started. The Saints shoved it down Tampa's throat. They got the ball back pretty quickly. They had already gotten 1 first down, converting a 3rd down, and Breeze completes that pass to convert another 3rd down as Cook is running, and then they've crossed midfield, and then the fumble happens. You're right. They were a first down away from taking a 2-score lead, if not for that play, which turned the game around. Pat, I thought that Tampa was the fighter that withstood the early rounds. I mean, the Saints were in the red zone once, almost in the red zone twice, looked as if they had a punt return for a touchdown that was called back. I thought Tampa was real shaky in the first quarter, and the defense allowed the offense to take a deep breath and get back in the game.
Yeah, it was pretty outstanding the way they turned it around, because you're right. Early on in the game, it looked like one of those types of games that it was on Monday Night Football when they lost 38-3. The Saints had all the momentum. They had those 2 returns, and it felt bad. I even had tweeted, like, I don't like the way this thing's starting. And again, as a guy who went into that game expecting kind of the worst, or expecting at least another loss to the New Orleans Saints, it felt that way very early on. And then, like you said, they were able to turn it around.
I did not realize until they threw that graphic up just how horrific Tampa Bay is covering kicks. I had no idea that they were that god-awful. And I know we have fewer kick returns than ever before, and I doubt it's something that can be fixed this late in the game. But man, oh man, those are the type of stats that, and as you said, it could have killed him in that game. I just didn't, this is an Achilles heel that, boy, you got to hope at some point, I guess, against Green Bay. Do you just start punting the ball out of bounds, Pat? I'm not joking. You can't have the worst punt return team in the league when you're in the NFC Championship. You can't afford special teams to cost you a game.
Yeah, it's interesting that it has been such an issue for this football team, and not even just this season, right? For a while, special teams has been, and finally they get the kicking right this year. But special teams has been something that's bit this team in the butt way too many times, and we thought, like you said, we were going to see it again yesterday. But yeah, for whatever reason, they gave up a lot of yards in the return game. And by the way, on the flip side, right, when you talk a field position game, they don't usually pick up a whole lot in the return game either. Jaden Mickens has kind of been their best return guy, and he hasn't even stayed up with the team the whole time. They've cut him and brought in other guys, and this is about as good as it gets. But yeah, special teams wise, it's a huge weakness for this football team.
We're talking with Pat Donovan, one half of the Pat and Aaron Show, middays, WDAE 95.3 in Tampa. Follow him on Twitter at Pat Donovan Radio. Pat, I got to be brutally honest. I thought a couple years ago Jason Light should have been let go. I thought he had done a worse job than the guy he replaced, Mark Dominic, to be brutally honest. But he ends up bringing Bruce Arians in, and it probably saved his job. And ever since then, Jason Light, pardon the pun, but has found the light. And if you look at so many of the key players yesterday, Devin White, obviously first-round pick from 2 years ago. The two rookies make arguably the two biggest plays in the game. They were second and fifth-round picks in this year's draft. All the maneuvering, even if you don't give him any credit for Brady, still, okay, he was the one that drafted Jones, stayed with him. He was the one that picked Fournette up. He was the one who brought AB in. I mean, Jason Light has not been talked about a whole heck of a lot. Guy's done a hell of a job the last 18 months, Pat.
Yeah, you bring up a really great point, and if you think about it, you know what I mean? Like, even if you don't give him credit for any of the free agents after Brady, because I think you can argue that many of those guys came here because of Brady, even if you don't do that, right? You brought up some great points, and you didn't bring up Tristan Wirfs. And think about the job that he's done this season. Yep. That first round pick, that offensive lineman that they took, and it's just been, one of their best offensive linemen all season. The kid's been so unbelievably consistent. You didn't bring up Vita Vea, and really for good reason, right? We haven't seen him for a long time, but when you think about the kind of football player that he is, he's been doing a nice job in the draft the last handful of years, and you can see some young talent on this football team when it comes to Devin White, Tristan Wirfs, Antoine Winfield Jr., and Vita Vea, who will return next season. Even though Tom Brady isn't long for the Buccaneers, they've got a young nucleus, and especially on defense, that can allow this team, if they figure out the quarterback position after Tom Brady, to be very competitive for a very long time.
The other thing that has impressed me, and I know it's a lot of Brady, but at the end of the day, the players still have to do it. You've got running backs who all expect to get the ball, and Fournette was a highly acclaimed guy who's taken the role as a backup and was sat for games. It was a healthy scratch. And yesterday, both he and Joe, and I know it's the playoffs and I get it, but they have, however long it took, Pat, they've bought in because Fournette ran hard, and he's been running hard lately.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, it's just everybody has bought in.
Yep.
And I think that's the Tom Brady effect. That's the Tom Brady effect, is every guy sees what the possibilities are, and they realize that it can't be just because Tom Brady's that damn good. It's got to be because they also buy in. And I think he's been able to kind of tell them, hey, oh, by the way, guys, I do this like every other year. Okay, like every other year I go to the AFC Championship game, now the NFC Championship. It's just what I do, and here's how it gets done. And how do you disagree with him? Because you've seen what he's done his entire career. So he's made it just so much easier for every single guy to buy in. And whether you're talking about the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side of the ball, you're 100% right. Nobody on this football team looks at this game in a selfish way, because 12 doesn't allow them to at the end of the day.
Well, the stat was out there this morning, Pat. It's, I don't know. Can you throw a Brady stat out there that you shake your head at in amazement anymore? We think we've heard them all, but this will be the 14th time in the 19 seasons that he's been a healthy starter that he's playing in the conference championship game, and the 9th time in the last 10 years. 14 out of 19.
It sounds stupid, because when I said, oh, hey, guys, I do this every other year, I was selling short. It's more than every other year. It is ridiculous. It's something we've never seen in this game, and it's something we may never see again. Because, listen, in part, a lot of it is because Bill Belichick is as good as he is.
Sure.
That's true, even though the Patriots had a down year. But also, Tom Brady proved this season it certainly wasn't all about Bill Belichick. And he has continued to be an outlier his entire career, whether it's the 6th-round pick thing, right? Whatever it is, like, there's so many things where, like, Tom Brady is just different than everyone else. And maybe you don't even realize it when he's outside your area, because I saw the things in New England, and I poo-pooed a lot of them. And then he comes here and you realize how real all of it is and how different he really is. And when the stats pile up and when you find out that Drew Brees last week passed him with his 8th victory against an NFC opponent in the playoffs. Think about that for a second, how absurd that is when Tom Brady's been in the AFC his entire career. Oh, by the way, Tom Brady tied Drew Brees yesterday with his 8th victory over an NFC opponent in the playoffs, and will pick up his 9th if they end up going to the Super Bowl.
Well, I know you just want to get to the game as a Bucs fan now, Pat, but I said it earlier. There's part of me that just thinks you need to beat Green Bay and you need to play the Bills, because if there is any one thing that is more kryptonite to the Buffalo Bills than Tom Brady, I don't know what that is, Pat. And I just, beat Buffalo, drop the mic, walk off into the sunset, and call it a day. And I think it would be the greatest thing ever.
It would be, and it would be ironic in a way, but also I would love to see the matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs again, because that thing turned out a lot closer in the end than it started out, and it'd be interesting to see how those two teams matched up again. And plus, if the Bucs were to lose, you could always talk about the passing the torch thing with Patrick Mahomes and all that. But I love their chances from here on out. The Saints were the bully. The Saints were in the Buccaneers' heads as far as I was concerned. They certainly were in Donovan Smith's head. We didn't see that yesterday. And that was the team it felt like they couldn't get by. And they did. And now I like their chances against anyone. I really do.
Pat, this isn't supposed to happen in this sport. It very rarely does. I mean, it happened with Favre when he went to Minnesota at the age of 40, and they, were a play away from going to the Super Bowl. And, but this is not a sport where one big personnel move makes this kind of impact. I mean, this was more sports talk dream scenario than it really is NFL reality scenario. And this is happening. It's really more remarkable when you think that, there have been other opportunities and other teams have thought they've gone out and gotten the one guy and made the big move and this, that, and the other thing. And, countless teams, Pat, we're all in, we're pushing all our chips in. Yeah. And here's Tampa Bay, and they did all that, and they were 7-5 a month and a half ago. And now they're a win away from the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and it's just like we said, Tom Brady's the outlier, right? It's amazing how different it seems to be around him wherever he goes, whatever he does. Like you said, we've seen this before. I hate to put it on the Philadelphia Eagles organization because it was the idiot backup quarterback who said that was a quote unquote dream team. But we all remember like the expectations we had for that team. And it just didn't go well. And we've seen teams throw money at different free agents forever. You don't often see free agent quarterbacks forget about Tom Brady deals, even very good free agent quarterbacks, right? We rarely see that. But even when you do, it never works out this way. It never works out as expected. And once again, Tom Brady's the outlier.
He's Pat Donovan, one half of the Pat and Aaron Show, middays, 95.3 WDAE in Tampa.
We lost him there, so you don't even have to say bye.
Pat, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. Follow Pat on Twitter at Pat Donovan Radio. The Tampa Bay Bucs are in the NFC Championship game for the 4th time in their history. 79 lost to the Rams. 99 lost to the Rams, 0-2 beat the Eagles, right? Not missing any, am I? For the 4th time in their franchise's history. And for the first time in 18 years, Tampa Bay in the conference championship game. They'll play in the early game